Good afternoon. I hope your day is going well, and welcome to the latest live training and conversation. And today we are talking about why asymmetrical thinking is beneficial for your health, not just your portfolio or business. I decided on this topic based off a random conversation I had earlier, um, maybe a few days ago. And I thought, you know what, let's try to make this into a health topic as well and to make it interesting for people and not always talk about health, longevity, fitness, and all that kind of stuff the same type of way all the time. Because maybe if you hear it this way, maybe it will connect a little more for you. So, anyway, think about this. I want to pose this as to set the stage here. In your business or with your investments, would you ever spend $1 just to make $1 back? Of course not. At least I hope not. That's pretty much symmetrical thinking. And more, that's average. That's hustling sideways at best. And no one wants to do that. And a lot of the more successful CEOs and founders and anyone and managers of portfolios and stuff, they're finding ways to win by finding asymmetry. And asymmetry is a small decision that's going to create this outsized return. Or on the other side, the downside is capped, but the upside is going to be exponential. And here's the thing, our health works the exact same way. So when I was sitting, we're having coffee, they're talking about this. They're going over, they actually start showing some charts and stuff throughout the years. I got to thinking that our health is the exact same way in so many aspects. Now, before I go any further, though, with this, I'll briefly introduce myself in case this is your first time with me. If this, if sorry, if this is your first time with me, welcome. I appreciate you stopping by. Hopefully, you'll hear something that makes you want to stay and keep staying, and then keep joining me. My name is Julian Hayes II. I am the founder of Executive Health, and we are simply on a mission to optimize CEOs, founders, and other A-level decision makers. You know, to me and to all of us, optimal health is the most underutilized competitive advantage that a leader can ever have, especially as they get chronologically older. You know, for me personally, I'm getting closer to 40. Some people, I got some other friends, they're getting closer to 50. But what we are starting to notice now is most of your competition, they're slowing down not because they want to. They're slowing down a lot of times out of necessity. But you don't have to. Just because you are chronologically getting older doesn't mean biologically and energetically you have to slow down. You have to have a lower standard of performance across the board. But you can only do this if you manage your $1 billion asset correctly, and that is your health. Because our health drives the big three. It's business, it's community, and it's family. And if you're interested in a precision built system that's wrapped around your biology, your psychology, your calendar, your mission, which are the critical fours, as I call them, go ahead and DM me or email me, and we'll set up a time to talk. Now, back to this conversation that we were having at the coffee shop. So we were talking about symmetry and asymmetry. And it may not be something that you've given much thought to, but each of us, and if you just look around in the world, everyone, they're going to tend to fall into two worlds. And we'll speak from the context of an entrepreneur and executive, because a lot of you are in some sort of decision making role here. And for those that are going to listen later on, the standard playbook of health is you'll most likely probably get an annual checkup. You'll most likely probably get a executive physical, right? You'll do a few random workouts per week. You'll throw in some cardio here and there as well. You'll count some steps, maybe track some macros, and even maybe wear a wearable. And there's nothing inherently wrong with those things. Those things are actually all beneficial. However, though, those things are what we think of as linear. They're symmetrical. You put the effort in and then you maintain. But there's really no leverage. There's really no exponential gains that are going to come from those type of things right there. So in a financial term, This is like perhaps buying a index fund, but you're expecting maybe VC returns back from it. Now, doing this index fund, you'll be fine, but it's never going to actually create this exponential return. It's not going to necessarily create this edge. And I was thinking just like with our money right now and how it's lost so much purchasing power over the years. And our biology can do the same thing as well. Is that very few things in life are going to stay at equilibrium. They're either going up or they're going to go down. They're either strengthening or they're either weakening. And so with our fitness, with our health, what worked at 27 is most likely not going to cut it at 37. I think about myself. I'm 39. What I was doing at 29, I can perform the same, but how I get to that level of performance, what it requires of me is a little different compared to a decade ago. And that's what we're talking about here. And I imagine for those of you who are 47, 57, 67, 77, even 87, 97, maybe a little higher, it's going to change in terms of what it requires for you to perform at your best. So now I want to flip this around and let's think about the asymmetrical side of things. And when we're thinking of asymmetrical health, these are small and targeted inputs and actions that are going to actually produce these massive returns in terms of your peace of mind, your stamina, your confidence, your overall leadership presence, and so many other facets. The benefits are going to extend much beyond the boardroom, much beyond any room where you're presenting. It's going to translate at home. It's going to translate at the gym. Wherever it is, it's going to translate there. And we already think this way in business, at least a lot of you all. In business investing, you have these small calculated bets, and they have a huge upside. I think about the guys who they invested in Bitcoin in like 2012, 2013. And just looking at it now, I remember I saw this video, not to get on a side tangent, but this is alive. So it's not, it's kind of a little more free flowing. There was a guy who made a video about Bitcoin, and he was just telling people to just invest a small amount. And what would happen if you did that? I can't do the math off the top of my head, but the people that took that advice actually, they're millionaires, multimillionaires, and some of them are even billionaires, depending on how much Bitcoin you bought at that time. And that's a great example of an asymmetrical bet. It's a small calculated bet that had this huge upside. Of course, it has quote unquote risk, but the upside was just unfathomable. And I still beat myself up about hearing about Bitcoin years ago and thinking, oh, whatever, I'm not doing this. So, but that's a whole nother story. Now, I want you also to we'll get back on subject here. I want you to apply the same lens to your biology because health, especially optimal health, it's not going to operate linearly at all. One small adjustment in the right place can absolutely cascade into exponential gains in terms of your peace of mind. Again, your assurance, your energy, your vigor, your sense of self, your longevity, your business performance, your overall body composition. And one overlooked risk, one thing that you ignore that's seemingly small in the moment that maybe I'll get to later at some point. One little thing like that can collapse everything that is being built. And one systemized decision can actually free up hundreds of other small micro decisions every week. That's then going to exponentially improve those other facets of your life. So when you start to see your health through this lens, and you stop treating it passively, you stop thinking in a maintenance mode that sometimes people talk. I hate that word. Like I'm just maintaining. And instead you start treating it as your most asymmetrical asset. Now, before I get into some asymmetric habits and maybe establishing what a foundational playbook actually looks like, it's important to really solidify this cost of symmetrical thinking. Like because I'll say it again, there is no maintaining. The lever is either moving forward or it's going to be sliding backward. And for most, symmetry looks like being reactive for a lot of people. You are waiting until something breaks before you act. The check engine light comes on, then I'm going to deal with it. Then I'm going to take action. So it's almost like something has to happen to force me into action. And this can be a breaking point with your weight. You finally are just like, man, this is just too much weight. I can't get in my suit. I look like trash. Or I can't get in my dress. I don't feel comfortable going to the beach. Whatever that breaking point is, it hits us all. This can be lab reports, and you're staring these numbers, and you get that diagnosis, that prognosis, and he says that, oh, this is where you're heading to if nothing changes. Things get a little more real then. This can be various other assessments. Maybe you were once an athlete, and you go do a cardio test or a body composition test or something like that, and you see just how big the gap is now compared to where you used to be. Even though in your head you still think of yourself the athlete, but reality is portraying a completely different picture right now. And then sometimes, and this is the hardest one to quantify, this is the hardest one to actually grasp because it's the least tangible of everything. There's just this feeling that's not going away. You just don't feel right. You just don't feel like yourself. You don't have your swagger. You don't have your edge. You know, you look in the mirror and just something's just not there. You're just not that dude that you know you can be, that you knew you once were, but you just can't put your pulse on it. And that's the hardest one, but you know it's there. And so biology is going to compound in reverse if you neglect it. The more wasteful, the more passive you are right now with your health, then of course, the more expensive and the deeper the hole gets later down the road. If you're speaking like a credit card person, it's probably a rite of passage being a college kid or in grad school. For most of us, at least, maybe some of you were financially savvy early on. You get these credit cards and you're like, wow, you're giving me all this credit card and you have thousands of dollars on it, which I don't know how that happens, that you can just get a credit card at so young of an age, but I don't know that. But you get this and you're not really good with managing money. And so you go on a spending spree and you think, I'll take care of it later. And the bill comes around and all you can do is the minimum payment or maybe a little more. And that interest keeps accumulating and accumulating. And over time, you're like, wow, this bill has exponentially gotten greater because I couldn't take care of it. And it's one of the same things here with our health and our biology. So with that said, where does the asymmetrical health habits and the practices, what do these things actually look like? Because there's, so before I leave you in this, I want to make this even more conceptual and put a little more, I guess, realism to it. Whatever. I can't think of the word that's coming on top of my head right now. But I have three key concepts in my head and in my notes right here that I just wrote down three words or three phrases. Number one was whether I'm consulting with someone or even just as I go about it with my own health, the very first thing is to protect the downside. And this is where you're thinking about and you're anticipating future chokeholds. And I guess since we're talking about finances, I think about there's an account, and I forgot the guy who came up with this to mention this, but he's like, I have like a checking account or a savings account, and it's just for dumb things. It's for dumb, unexpected things that's going to happen in my life or that I'm going to do. And that's what it's there for. And this is in essence a chokehold. And so you're gathering intel from a health standpoint here You're going to be gathering intel so you can get a clear picture on how you should proceed in order to be effective, in order to also maximize your greatest resource, which is our time. So, from a health standpoint, in 2025, what does protecting the downside mean? Protecting the downside can be a absolute wide spectrum of things, right? If we want to go really, really high level, we can look at full body MRIs. We can do coronary calcium scores. We can do deuterium testing. We can do omega-3 index and fatty acid profile testing. I'm a huge fan of really, really, really maximizing DHA. I know I don't do a lot of nutrition videos, but that is one thing that I absolutely would focus on is DHA. Not to get too off on another side tangent. We have neurocognitive assessments. These, you don't have to go to a lab to do these. There's computerized ones. That's a good start. That's a good baseline to have. There's body composition scans, of course. So that's going to be your DEXA scan. And not even in going beyond DEXA scan, or sorry, beyond those, you're looking at your body fat, your lean body mass. You're looking at, and there's so many more that you could do with that. On a other stance, it's ensuring that you're taking care of basic behaviors, such as your sleep, getting ample amounts of deep sleep most nights, REM sleep as well. That's a very basic level. So as I mentioned at the very start of this particular concept, it's a wide spectrum. You can do the testing, but you can also scale it down and start with the basic behaviors that cost nothing. And so the big picture here is that you are going to hedge your biological risk before it compounds. You're going to hedge your bets before something bigger can happen. An easy way to think about this is think about where you're from. Where are your people originally from? Some of us are from colder climates. Some of us are from more warmer equatorial climates. And look at our skin types. That tells us something. Our complexion. How easy can we tan compared to not? You can look at things like your heteroplasmy. And all of these things is giving you a baseline level of how I should be thinking about my health. So for me, obviously, I come from a climate that's closer to the equator in the sun. And then I have a best friend who's way more paler than me. Not sure if that's correct grammar, but he is much paler than me. Probably got some Viking blood, some Viking DNA in him. So as a baseline, as we think about our relationship with light and the sun, our relationship with the cold, it's going to be different. And that's a way to start thinking about your downside. That's a way to start thinking about optimizing. What am I more prone to being where I'm from compared to my friend that I'm talking about, and vice versa? That's an easy way to do it without starting with any testing or anything. Once you have that baseline there, then you start thinking about the testing and everything. And that's really what precision health, precision medicine, whatever word you want to use, that's really what it's all about. And so the second thing here on the concept, after protecting the downside, now we want to capitalize on the upside. And so examples of this is VO2 max. And you'll hear me talk about this a lot. I think I have a video or two on this. And I think I also have if you follow me on LinkedIn, I wrote posts on it. So, but VO2 max, really, really important. It's actually something that's actually well studied. So this is an example. And another example would be protecting and then also preserving lean muscle. You think about when you get old, and I'm sure we know someone or know someone's family member did this. They fell, and it was game over for them. Something as simple like that. And sometimes these are things we don't think about because we think about muscle just from the standpoint of how we're going to look in a suit, how we're going to look on the beach, how we're going to look in our dress. But we don't think about this stuff from a functionality standpoint. What about movement? That's a huge upside. Being able to move, being able to limber. When you do fall, when you do trip, being able to sustain that and handle and absorb that fall and shock without too much happening. That's a big pillar. That's a big ROI. Having optimal circadian and light behaviors and habits. That's a huge thing that you're capitalizing on the upside. Morning sunlight is not just light. It's activating so many things. It's helping you lose fat, whether you realize it or not, because there's a lot of different mechanisms that are only going to be activated from that morning sunlight. That's capitalizing on the upside. That's also one that's free and easy to do, and is also going to lead to a bigger cascade-like effect in terms of the food you eat, the way you exercise, your mental health throughout the day, all from that one habit right there. That's a huge upside. These multipliers not only improve your capacity in every single role that you carry in your day-to-day life, whether that's a father, whether that's a husband, whether that's a um, manager or whatever the role is. These are also going to address a lot of the common health issues that are seemingly growing in society today. The big ones, the hearts, um, the cancers, the Alzheimer's, all these different ailments that are growing and becoming more and more of an issue today. And so the third one here is systematizing. So we have discipline, we have willpower, and these things cannot be relied on, especially in the type of role that you are likely living. You know, you're being a decision maker that makes a lot of decisions throughout the day. No CEO, no founder is going to micromanage every department as the company grows. Instead, you're going to actually look into building systems, and your health should operate the same way. So, to reiterate on these three key concepts, when you're starting to think of your health in an asymmetrical way, number one, we are protecting our downside. Number two, we are capitalizing then on the upside. And number three, we are now systematizing and helping the machine run. So I have a question for you that I'm going to leave you with and leave you to ponder with. And I'll try to frame this in a financial sense to stick on the theme here. Are you managing your health like a 50-50 trade or like the billion-dollar asymmetrical asset that it truly is? Because in leadership, just like in business, the biggest wins are not going to come from doing more. There's a great book by Price Pitcher called U Square. And working harder is not the answer. It's one of the first things on there. For a quantum leap, working harder is not necessarily the thing. The biggest wins, whether in sports, leadership, business, fitness, they don't come from doing more. It's important to realize that. I had to remind myself of this at times. Yes, you got to work, but just solely working hard blindly without anything else is not necessarily the answer. The answer comes from spotting the leverage that others miss. And that's why we build precision systems for leaders. And so you can think of it as a private wealth firm for your health, or as a Formula One pit crew that's constantly monitoring, adjusting, optimizing your biology so you can perform at the highest level without any downtime, whether it's in the arena of the community, business, and most importantly, your family. So if any of this resonates, any questions, message me, email me, and until next time, stay awesome, be limitless, optimize today, lead tomorrow. Peace.